You are standing in a jewelry store in 1936, and the glass case in front of you holds the entire weight of an expectation you did not create. You haven't met the person you'll marry. You may not have thought about marriage at all. But somewhere in a boardroom in London, a decision has already been made about what your proposal will require. De Beers controlled approximately 85% of the global diamond supply in the 1930s. The company had a problem. Diamond stockpiles were accumulating, prices were falling, and the stones themselves had no durable practical value. In 1938, Harry Oppenheimer flew to New York and hired N.W. Ayer, an advertising agency, to solve this. The brief was not to sell diamonds. The brief was to manufacture a cultural necessity. Francis Geraghty, a copywriter at N.W. Ayer, wrote the line in 1947, "A diamond is forever." She reportedly hated it. It won Advertising Age's slogan of the century in 1999. Before the campaign launched, diamond engagement rings were present in fewer than 10% of American proposals. By 1990, the figure was 80%. The ring did not emerge from romantic tradition. It was inserted into romantic tradition by a company with a surplus inventory problem. The mechanism is precise. Diamonds hold their value not because they are scarce, they are not scarce, but because De Beers controls the release of supply to maintain artificial scarcity. The secondary market for diamonds, as Wired documented in 2018, returns roughly 20 to 50 cents on the dollar. The investment framing is part of the same campaign. Diamonds are not investments, they are controlled inventory. The campaign also discouraged resale, gifting, or trading of diamonds between people, a practice that would expose price differences and undermine the illusion of fixed value. The phrase, "a diamond is forever," is not romance, it is a prohibition on liquidation. You are not thinking of any of this when you stand at the counter. That's what makes it work. The desire feels entirely your own. The urgency feels biological. The price feels like a measure of devotion rather than a markup engineered by a mining monopoly that hired a copywriter to make the two synonymous.
You are in a sanitarium in Battle Creek, Michigan in 1894. The walls are white. The patients are following a strict regimen of cold baths, vigorous exercise, no meat, no caffeine, and absolute sexual abstinence. The man running this institution is Dr. John Harvey Kellogg, and he believes that bland food is a cure for what he calls the masturbation epidemic. Kellogg invented cornflakes accidentally as a digestive experiment in controlled eating. His original formulation was deliberately unsweetened, designed to suppress arousal through caloric blandness. He filed a patent for the flaking process in 1896. His brother, Will Keith Kellogg, immediately recognized the commercial potential and added sugar. John Harvey was outraged. Will Keith was right. The Kellogg Company was founded in 1906 and by 1909 was spending $1 million annually on advertising, more than any other food company in America. The marketing repositioned cornflakes not as a Victorian sexual suppressant, but as a modern, efficient, scientifically produced breakfast appropriate for an industrial age. The health framing was not incidental, it was the entire strategy. The American breakfast cereal industry is currently valued at approximately $45 billion globally. The average box carries terms like good source of fiber, heart healthy, or made with whole grain, claims that are technically regulated by the FDA, but that the Federal Trade Commission has repeatedly found misleading in context. A 2011 study published in Pediatrics found that cereal marketed to children contained 85% more sugar, 65% more sodium, and 60% less fiber than cereals marketed to adults. Marion Nessel, professor of nutrition at NYU, documented in her 2002 book Food Politics how cereal manufacturers systematically lobbied the USDA and FDA to weaken labeling requirements and expand allowable health claims. The label is not neutral information. It is the terminal output of a lobbying process. The industry that started as a prescription for sexual purity in a Victorian sanatorium is now the first thing your doctor tells you is better than eggs. That's not an accident of history. That's continuity of strategy.
You are in a pharmacy in 1919, reading a small advertisement, and you have just learned that you have a condition. The condition is called halitosis. You did not know you had it. You could not have known, because the condition did not have this name until Lambert Pharmaceutical needed it to. Listerine was formulated in 1879 by Dr. Joseph Lawrence as a surgical antiseptic. It was later sold as a floor cleaner, a cure for gonorrhea, and a dandruff treatment. In 1914, it became the first prescription product sold over the counter in the United States. It was effective at killing bacteria, but had no established market. Gerald Barnes Lambert, son of the founder, hired a copywriter who found the word halitosis in an 1874 British medical journal describing a rare pathological breath condition. Lambert repurposed it to describe ordinary morning breath. The campaign that followed between 1921 and 1928 is studied in marketing schools as a masterclass in manufactured anxiety. The advertisements showed people losing jobs, romantic partners, and social standing due to breath they couldn't detect themselves, because, as the ads noted, even your best friends won't tell you. The campaign introduced the concept that social failure could result from a biological deficiency you were structurally unable to perceive. Listerine revenue grew from $115,000 in 1921 to $8 million in 1928, a 4,000% increase in 7 years. The American Dental Association had no position on mouthwash. The product was creating the category and the problem simultaneously. The advertising scholar James B. Twitchell, writing in Ad Cult USA 1996, identified this campaign as the first systematic deployment of what he called anxiety commerce, the pattern of inventing a condition, naming it with clinical-sounding language, and then selling the cure. The pattern did not stop with halitosis. It became the template. The global oral care market is now worth approximately $50 billion. The next time you use mouthwash, the anxiety producing that action was installed in American consumer culture by a man whose family business sold floor cleaner until they needed something more profitable. You are in a school cafeteria in 1992, looking at the poster on the wall. The pyramid is large, colorful, and authoritative. At the base, 6 to 11 servings of bread, cereal, rice, and pasta. At the top, fats, oils, and sweets, use sparingly. This poster was produced by the United States Department of Agriculture. What it did not say on the poster is that the USDA is also the agency responsible for promoting the products of American agriculture. Louise Light was the nutritionist the USDA hired to design the original pyramid in the 1980s. Her team recommended 2 to 3 servings of whole grains per day. They recommended limiting refined carbohydrates. They placed fruits and vegetables at the base. When her design reached USDA leadership, the grain servings were tripled. The vegetable and fruit base was demoted. Light later testified before Congress and wrote in her 2005 memoir, What to Eat, that the changes were made directly in response to lobbying from the grain and meat industries. The USDA received over $30 million in lobbying expenditures from food industry groups in the year the pyramid launched, according to data later compiled by the Center for Responsive Politics. The pyramid was a dietary guideline produced by the department that both regulated food safety and promoted agricultural sales, an institutional conflict of interest that was baked into the document's structure. Walter Willett, chair of the Department of Nutrition at Harvard Medical School, published a formal critique of the USDA pyramid in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2003, calling it not based on solid science. Harvard School of Public Health subsequently released its own healthy eating plate as a corrective, explicitly noting that the USDA guidelines were influenced by commercial interests. The pyramid was replaced by MyPlate in 2011. MyPlate still features a dairy circle as a separate food group, a requirement lobbied for by the dairy industry, according to documents obtained by the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. The icon changed, the mechanism didn't. You are changing a light bulb, and you are annoyed that it burned out again. What you do not know, what you were not supposed to know, is that in 1924, a group of the world's largest electrical companies met in Geneva and agreed on precisely how long your bulb would last. The Phoebus Cartel was formed on December 23, 1924. Its members included Osram, Germany, Philips, Netherlands, General Electric, United States, Associated Electrical Industries, UK, Compagnie des Lampes, France, and several other major manufacturers. The cartel's founding documents, recovered and analyzed by Marcus Krajewski of the University of Basel and published in the journal Technology and Culture in 2014, reveal a systematic program to reduce light bulb lifespan from approximately 2,500 hours, where technology had arrived in 1924, to a mandatory ceiling of 1,000 hours. Companies whose bulbs lasted longer than 1,000 hours were fined. Quality control was enforced not to make bulbs better, but to ensure they failed on schedule. A 1,000-hour lifespan was optimal for sales velocity. A 2,500-hour bulb would reduce replacement purchases by 60%. Krajewski documented that the cartel enforced its lifespan limits through a certification process with fines as high as $12 per thousand bulbs for companies whose products lasted longer than the agreed maximum. This was not a soft agreement. It was a contractual engineering ceiling imposed on a product that was already technically superior. The Phoebus Cartel is widely cited as the first documented case of planned obsolescence, the deliberate limitation of product lifespan to increase replacement purchasing. The strategy outlasted the cartel itself, which dissolved after World War II. It migrated into consumer electronics, automobiles, and software. Apple was fined $27 million by French regulators in 2020 for using software updates to slow older iPhone models, a digital instantiation of the same mechanism the Phoebus Cartel imposed with a wiring specification in 1924. The bulb you just replaced probably lasted exactly as long as someone decided it should.
You are holding a bottle of water with a mountain on the label. The mountain is in France. The water was sourced in New Jersey. The label is not regulated to match the contents. In 1999, the Natural Resources Defense Council published a 4-year study testing 1,000 bottles of water from 103 brands. The results, approximately 22% of the bottles tested, contained chemical contaminants above state health limits, including arsenic, chlorine byproducts, and bacteria. The same study documented that municipal tap water in the United States is tested for contaminants more than 100 times more frequently than bottled water and is subject to immediate public disclosure requirements under the Safe Drinking Water Act. Bottled water is regulated as a food product under the FDA with significantly weaker testing requirements. The Environmental Working Group conducted a follow-up study in 2008 testing 10 brands of bottled water and found 38 chemical pollutants across all brands, including disinfection byproducts, industrial chemicals, and bacteria. Most brands did not disclose their water's source, treatment method, or test results. The global bottled water market is valued at approximately $350 billion as of 2023. Nestlé, Coca-Cola, and PepsiCo collectively control roughly 40% of the U.S. bottled water market. PepsiCo's Aquafina and Coca-Cola's Dasani are both purified municipal water, tap water that has been filtered and remineralized and sold at 1,000 to 2,000% markup over the tap source it was drawn from. The premium framing operates through two mechanisms. First, the label design activates associations with pristine environments through imagery that has no regulatory connection to the product. Second, the container itself implies a category difference. You do not drink bottled milk thinking it is fundamentally different from refrigerator milk. You do think bottled water is different from tap. The mountain on the bottle is a story about water. The water inside is frequently a story about a municipal pipe. The distance between those two stories is worth $350 billion per year.
You are in a room with a machine, and the examiner is telling you that it will know if you lie. You believe him. That is the first lie the machine told. The polygraph measures heart rate, blood pressure, respiration, and galvanic skin response simultaneously. It was developed in the early 1920s by John Larson, a medical student working under August Vollmer at the Berkeley Police Department. William Moulton Marston, a psychologist who later created Wonder Woman, separately developed a blood pressure deception test and aggressively promoted it as legally admissible evidence. Courts disagreed. The Frye Standard, established in 1923, excluded the polygraph from federal courts because it lacked general scientific acceptance. That exclusion has been upheld and reinforced repeatedly since. In 2003, the National Academy of Sciences published a comprehensive review of polygraph research, commissioned by the Department of Energy. The conclusion? The theoretical rationale for the polygraph is quite weak. Empirical studies placed accuracy rates between 70 and 90% under controlled conditions, numbers that sound reassuring until you understand base rates. If 1% of subjects being tested are actually deceptive, a 90% accurate test will still produce more false positives than true positives. The mathematics of base rates means the test fails the people it's supposed to catch while flagging innocent people at scale. Despite this, the FBI, CIA, NSA, and law enforcement agencies in more than 30 states continue to use polygraphy for employee screening, criminal investigation, and parole monitoring. The federal government administers approximately 70,000 polygraph examinations per year, according to the American Polygraph Association's own published figures. The American Psychological Association, the National Research Council, and the British Psychological Society have all formally stated that polygraph evidence does not meet scientific standards for reliability. The polygraph industry is not a fringe practice. It is an institution built on a premise that its own scientific reviews have rejected, and it persists because it is useful, not because it is accurate. Useful for whom and against whom is a question the machine is not designed to answer. You are drinking a green juice that cost $14, and the label says it is cleansing your liver. Your liver is already doing that. It has been doing it since you were born. It will continue doing it until it stops working. The juice has nothing to do with it. Edzard Ernst, professor of complementary medicine at the University of Exeter and the first academic to hold a chair in that field, conducted the largest systematic review of published detoxification studies in 2015, published in the Journal of Human Nutrition and Dietetics. His conclusion? There was no convincing evidence that any commercially available detox product or program removes toxins from the body. More specifically, he found that the studies that did exist were largely conducted by the companies selling detox products, used undefined endpoints, and failed to name the specific toxins being removed. The structural problem is definitional. The detox industry does not specify which toxins are targeted, at what concentration, or by what mechanism the product neutralizes them. In the absence of specification, the claim is unfalsifiable, and therefore commercially durable. You cannot disprove a claim that has not been made precisely enough to test. The liver processes everything that enters the bloodstream. The kidneys filter waste into urine. The lymphatic system clears cellular debris. The skin eliminates trace amounts of compounds through sweat. These systems are not improved by commercial cleanses. They operate on molecular pathways that a $14 juice cannot access. When they fail, the result is organ failure, not toxin accumulation that a dietary supplement can address. The global detox and cleanse market was valued at approximately $70 billion in 2023. The category includes supplements, teas, juice fasts, colon cleanses, infrared saunas marketed as detoxifying, and foot pads sold with the claim that they draw toxins through the skin overnight. None of these products are required to demonstrate efficacy before sale. They are food products or cosmetics, not drugs. The body does have a detoxification system. It came standard. The industry selling you an upgrade for $14 a bottle is billing you for work that's already been done. You feel mildly guilty right now because you know you haven't drunk enough water today. That guilt was installed in you by a sentence that nobody wrote. In 1945, the United States Food and Nutrition Board published recommended dietary allowances, Among its recommendations was the following: approximately 2.5 liters of water per day for most adults. The sentence that followed has been systematically omitted for the past 80 years. Most of this quantity is contained in prepared foods. Heinz Walton, Professor Emeritus of Physiology at Dartmouth Medical School, published a review in the American Journal of Physiology in 2002, specifically tracing the origin of the 8 glasses a day recommendation. His findings: no published clinical research supported the rule. No controlled study had established that 8 8-ounce glasses of water per day improved health outcomes in healthy adults. The recommendation, as widely circulated, appeared to derive from the 1945 document with its qualifying clause removed. The human body has a detection mechanism for dehydration. It is called thirst. Stanley Goldfarb and Dan Negoianu published a review in the Journal of the American Society of Nephrology in 2008, examining the specific health claims made for high water consumption, clearer skin, improved kidney function, flushed toxins, weight loss, better concentration. They found no evidence supporting any of them in normal, healthy adults. There is no evidence, they wrote, that most people in temperate climates benefit from forcing additional fluid intake. The bottled water industry's marketing since the 1990s has systematically reinforced the 8 glasses rule. Hydration tracking apps, water bottle manufacturers, and wellness platforms amplify it. The recommendation has become decoupled from its origin and its absence of evidence, functioning as received wisdom. Your body already knows how much water it needs. It's been telling you since before anyone was selling you the answer. You are standing at a Hallmark display in early May, and you feel the low-grade pressure of an obligation you did not consciously agree to. The card will cost you $7. The sentiment inside was written by a stranger. The act of purchasing it has been made to feel equivalent to love. Joyce Hall founded what became Hallmark Cards in Kansas City, Missouri, in 1910. The company's early marketing, documented by Lee Eric Schmidt in his 1995 book Consumer Rights: The Buying and Selling of American Holidays, repositioned the act of greeting card purchase from an optional personal gesture to a social duty. The mechanism was not selling sentiment, it was selling social consequence. The implication that failing to give a card was a detectable omission with relational costs. Mother's Day is the sharpest case. Anna Jarvis founded the holiday in 1908, 2 years after her mother's death, as a day for personal, handwritten tributes. By 1923, commercial greeting card companies had co-opted it entirely. Jarvis spent the remainder of her life legally and publicly opposing the commercialization. She was arrested in 1925 for disturbing the peace at a candy industry Mother's Day event she was protesting. She described greeting card companies as charlatans, bandits, pirates, racketeers, kidnappers, and termites. She died in 1948 in a sanitarium, her personal savings exhausted by her advocacy campaign. The holiday she created is now one of the 3 highest revenue greeting card periods of the year. The global greeting card market generates approximately $7 billion annually. The three peak periods, Christmas, Valentine's Day, and Mother's Day, were all either created or dramatically amplified by commercial interests that stood to benefit from institutionalizing the sentiment. The American Greetings Corporation was the leading opponent of legislation that would have required pricing transparency on greeting cards in the 1990s. The feeling that you are not doing enough if you do not buy the card is not instinct, it was installed. The evidence is that the person who most loudly opposed it died broke in an institution, while the people who installed it built one of the most durable emotional